Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. And today, we're being joined by Robert J. Mullen, who's currently publishing his second book called In the Arms of Redemption. Robert, welcome to the show.
Hello, Paul. It's so good to be with you, and thank you for taking the time to allow me to share on this podcast. Thank you so much.
Well, we are thrilled to have you, Robert. Are you ready to begin?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Well, for me, I would advise them to first become familiar with the market in which they want to publish. And I think that's the first thing that I would advise them to do, as well as believe in what they're doing, that it will offer a help and provide help for someone and the audience that they're trying to reach, as well as being passionate about what they're writing about. So those are a couple of things that I would advise them, and that's a good starting point for me.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Well, for me, the hardest part and the hardest thing about trying to get published is to find an audience, or certainly in the time in which we're living now, finding the audience or to convince an editor that there is an audience to be identified and to be reached. And a lot of the editors will ask themselves whenever I'm talking to them, who's going to read this book? And of course, then the second question is, how many people are going to read it? And that's how large the audience is. How large is your audience? Also, the other thing I would say is the length of readership. Like with the book length, the readership, with it diminishing because of other medias and other formats out there. So trying to find readers becomes a lot more difficult. And even though we have a lot of quality writers and strong storylines, which are extremely important, but being aware that the intended audience is very essential for us to reach. And so just some of those things that have made it hard for me, and I'm sure that a lot of authors have probably gone through the same kind of thing.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
What has worked well for me are a couple of things. I, of course, did an early start of launching the book by making contacts, phone calls. I would begin with the sphere of influence that I had. Of course, I'm a pastor and a conference speaker for nonprofit organizations. And so I started reaching out early to the group of people that I knew, pastors and other ministry leaders, businessmen and businesswomen, and then used my blog site and shared excerpts of the upcoming book, and then also growing my email list and social media platforms. And so I just stayed within the niche of self-help and shared that with the people that I had direct relationships with.
Well, I think it's one of the best strategies too, especially focusing on those direct relationships and having them help. So how were the people that you reached out to, how were they able to help you? Was this in regards to speaking at their various churches, organizations? What was the main thing you were trying to accomplish with that?
With that, I, of course, felt that the subject matter that I had to offer concerning the book, first of all, would be helpful to them, and they would agree. And so some of the organizations that I would speak at their conferences, so it would be keynote speaker as well as workshops, and it was in relationship to businessmen and businesswomen. So there's organizations that that I'm working with that are dealing specifically with Christian businessmen and businesswomen as well as ministry leaders. And so I would get the platform that was offered to me was selling the books at the conferences, allowing me to reach out and promote it while I'm speaking, before I actually speak, and offering this as a product that they could buy. And so that was the main thing. So selling the books at the conferences, speaking at the churches, and then taking orders via phone and through emails, and directing them to the place where they could order.
Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Well, of late, there are a couple of books that I really enjoy, but lately, one of my favorite is the author is Dr. Caroline Leaf. And one of the books that I love so much is Think, Learn, Succeed. And so it's understanding and using your mind to thrive in any area of your life. And so I felt like that the reason why I enjoyed it so much is because it deals with important issues in our lives. And in the book, it teaches us to control the brain and take charge over our minds to improve how we feel, think, and live. And so that's the reason why I like that book so much, because I find it very helpful for all of us.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote is, "You may be knocked down, but not knocked out." And the reason why, I don't know where that came from, if I picked it up somewhere along the way, but I don't know who originally said that, but you may be knocked down, but not knocked out. And the reason why it's my favorite quote is because it dealt with me personally, and also in many people's lives when a lot of people are knocked down. So when we are knocked down, we at least have an opportunity to get back up. That's why it's my favorite quote.
Well, Robert, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show today. What is the best way for people to find you online?
The best way to find me is I have a blog. It's robertjmullen.com. And the other good place would be LinkedIn. And you can search my name on there.
Well, Robert, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.